Welcome back to day 7 of Podmas. This slow December series where we sit together, quietly, honestly, and look at the parts of our lives we often rush past. Today, we're stepping into a topic that so many people live with quietly, almost invisibly. The quiet burnout, when you're exhausted but still functioning. Not the collapse kind. Not the dramatic fall-apart kind. The other kind, the one you can hide behind a calm smile, a tidy to-do list, and the sentence, "I'm fine, really." Yeah. The burnout that doesn't stop your life. It just drains the color out of it. You still show up. You still deliver. People still say, "You're so strong," or "I don't know how you do it." But inside, there's this quiet depletion. Like you're running your life on low battery, with no chance to charge. And that's exactly what we want to explore today. Not from a dramatic angle, but from a human one. Why this quiet burnout happens. How we miss the signs. Why it's so common among high-functioning people. And how to gently come back to yourself before the exhaustion becomes your personality. And we'll talk about it like two women who have lived some life.
Seen things.
And collected enough emotional mileage to know when something is quietly breaking. So, if right now you're tired, but still moving. If you feel like you don't have the right to rest. If you've been operating on autopilot. This episode is for you. Let's get into it. Okay, let's ease into this. Because before we talk about what quiet burnout feels like, we need to understand what it actually is. Not the dramatic collapse people imagine, but the subtle version that hides under high-functioning behavior.
Right.
Most people think burnout means you're falling apart, crying at work, unable to get out of bed, everything exploding. But that's the movie version. The real burnout, the one we're talking about today, is psychological, biological, and social. It's slower, quieter, and much easier to miss. Exactly. From a psychology perspective, burnout isn't just being tired. It's what happens when your stress system stays activated for too long without relief. The human body was built for short bursts of stress, not constant pressure. So when you live in long-term tension, even low-level tension, something starts to break down. And here's the part people misunderstand. Quiet burnout doesn't show up as chaos. It shows up as numbness. Your brain starts conserving energy. The emotional lights dim. Your motivation drops. Your creativity shrinks. It's like your inner world goes into power-saving mode. Yes, psychologists call it emotional depletion. And socially, it's so easy to hide because we reward the behavior that causes it. We praise the person who's always reliable, always calm, always productive, always strong. But inside that same person, their nervous system might be running on fumes. We even celebrate it. "Oh, she never complains. He handles everything. She's so put together." And people think it's a compliment. But sometimes it's actually a symptom. Yes, because quiet burnout isn't the collapse. It's the slow erosion. It's when you're functioning, but not feeling. You're moving, but not present. You're doing everything right, but everything feels wrong. You're exhausted in a way sleep can't fix. You're overwhelmed, but you'd never admit it out loud. And biologically, your body is trying to protect you. When the stress cycle never gets to complete, meaning you never fully relax, process emotions, or take genuine rest, your system gets stuck in what researchers call chronic activation. And chronic activation leads to reduced emotional capacity, decreased attention, irritability or numbness, decision fatigue, brain fog, social withdrawal, and this strange, quiet sadness you can't explain. And what makes it quiet burnout instead of classic burnout is that you're still functioning. You're still showing up. You're still performing. You're still being the responsible one. But inside, you're running on the emotional equivalent of 3% battery. I think the saddest part is that people often don't realize something is wrong. Because nothing is crashing. There's no dramatic moment. No big breakdown. Just a slow fading. Yes, psychologically, it's more like erosion than explosion. And because it's subtle, people don't ask for help. They don't slow down. They don't notice. They normalize it. And socially, this is important. Quiet burnout is extremely common in people who are Caregivers, the emotional strong ones, the reliable ones, people pleasers, perfectionists, or anyone used to holding everything together because society teaches them their worth is in being capable. So they keep going, and going, and going, until functioning becomes a costume. So, now that we've laid out what quiet burnout is, I want us to step into something even more important. How it actually feels from the inside. Because burnout isn't just a definition, it's a lived experience. And most people listening don't realize they're in it until something breaks.
Yes.
Quiet burnout has this
Texture to it.
It's not dramatic. It's not a collapse. It's this slow erosion, like you're leaking energy from somewhere you can't see. And most women I've met who go through it say the same thing. I don't feel bad. I just don't feel much. Exactly. It's like your emotions get muted. Not gone, just turned down to low volume. One sign I see a lot is when someone says, I'm not sad, I'm not angry. I'm just tired. But it's not physical tiredness. It's that deep, bone-level fatigue that rest doesn't fix. Quiet burnout makes you functional, but detached. You're checking boxes. You show up. You answer messages. You meet deadlines. But inside, everything feels far away, like life is happening 2 rooms over. Yes. And people think burnout looks like crying at your desk or breaking down. But the quiet type often looks like laughing at jokes you don't feel. Agreeing because it's easier than thinking. Having no opinion because your brain is tired of choosing. Doing everything on autopilot. Or needing more and more silence. Not because you enjoy it, but because noise feels like a threat. Even simple questions like, what do you want for dinner? Feel like too much input. The famous, I don't know, you choose. People think it's indecisiveness. Sometimes it's actually burnout. The brain is overloaded, so it takes the shortcut. Avoid decisions.
Exactly.
And another one that's rarely talked about is the shrinking of joy. You don't necessarily feel miserable. You just stop getting excited. You say things like, I'll rest when things slow down. But they never do. And you never stop. There's also this quiet resentment that builds. Not loud resentment, not anger. Just this sense of, why does everything feel heavier than it should? And you start rehearsing little fantasies of escape. Not big ones like moving to another country. Just tiny ones like, what if I could turn my phone off for a week? What if I didn't have to be available to everyone? What if I could stop worrying for one day? Burnout speaks in those small, exhausted wishes.
Yes.
And the wildest part? People around you often have no idea. Because quiet burnout wears a very convincing mask of, I'm fine, it's just a busy season. But inside, and this is the part people rarely admit, you feel like you're slowly disappearing from your own life. Like you're always there, but you're never present. Your body's in the room, but your spirit is on low battery mode. You know what's strange, Elen? Quiet burnout is one of the only conditions people congratulate you for.
Exactly.
You can be falling apart on the inside. And people will still say, wow, you're doing amazing. Because from the outside, it looks like discipline. Or strength. Or she's got it under control.
Yes.
Quiet burnout doesn't look chaotic. It looks efficient. You're still showing up. You're replying on time. You're not snapping at people. You're carrying everything silently. So nobody realizes you're drowning, because you drown gracefully. Psychologists actually talk about this. They call it compensated fatigue, when your system is barely holding, but you've built so many coping mechanisms that it looks stable. And socially, we're conditioned for it. We praise the woman who never complains. We admire the person who keeps taking on more. We love the colleague who is reliable no matter what. But we never ask at what cost? Right. Because quiet burnout hides behind traits we value. High responsibility, emotional composure, perfectionism, independence, being the strong one, being the easy one. It's almost ironic. The more capable you are, the more invisible your exhaustion becomes. And often you yourself miss the signs. Because you think, I'm still functioning, so I must be fine. But functioning isn't the same as feeling alive.
Exactly.
You measure your well-being by productivity instead of peace. You say things like, I'm just tired. It's just a phase.
I just need a weekend.
It's nothing really. But underneath, your nervous system is waving a little white flag. And here's the hard part. Quiet burnout gets mistaken for maturity,
Yes.
for being grown, for being grounded, for being strong. When really, it's your body whispering, I can't keep doing this. And because your life doesn't collapse dramatically, nobody, not even you, realizes how deep the exhaustion runs. That's why it's so important to talk about it. Not because burnout is rare, but because it's painfully common and beautifully hidden. You know, Elen, I think this is the part people don't talk about enough. Quiet burnout doesn't come from working too much, not really. It comes from carrying too much for too long without release. And that's why simple rest never fixes it. Sleep helps, sure. A day off feels good. But the moment you're back in your life, the weight returns. Because the real exhaustion is emotional, psychological, and, honestly, existential.
Exactly.
People think burnout is about hours. But if it were, anyone who works a lot would collapse. And that's not the case. Burnout is about unresolved pressure, unspoken resentment, invisible expectations, and the constant self-negotiation of don't fall apart, not today. The body can recover from tiredness, but recovering from carrying a version of yourself you can't sustain? That's the real depletion. Yes. Psychologically, burnout often comes from chronic internal conflict. Not the loud conflict with others, the quiet one with yourself. Like, I can handle it versus I'm actually drowning. People rely on me versus nobody sees I need help too. I should be grateful versus I'm not okay. Just push through versus I'm at my limit. This internal split drains more energy than any long workday. And then there's identity pressure. Burnout deepens when our sense of worth is tied to being capable, available, composed. When you feel like you can't slow down without disappointing people, burnout becomes a silent contract you didn't mean to sign. So true. And this is the painful irony. People with quiet burnout don't need a vacation. They need permission. Permission to not be the strong one. Permission to need things. Permission to disappoint someone. Permission to not be perfect, productive, or polished. Because the real root of burnout is not exhaustion. It's self-abandonment.
Yes.
And there's also something deeper. A kind of emotional backlog that builds when you keep going despite being overwhelmed. Every ignored feeling, every swallowed no, every moment you wanted support but stayed silent, it doesn't disappear. It stacks, layer on layer, until even the smallest thing feels heavy. Quiet burnout is basically emotional debt in the body. And the body always collects the debt. Through tight shoulders, migraines, numbness, irritability, insomnia. The symptoms aren't random. They're messages. People say, I just need a weekend off. But the truth is, you can't rest your way out of a life that keeps draining you. Yes, burnout ends only when the pattern ends. And the pattern is usually overgiving, overperforming, overexplaining, overfunctioning. Burnout heals when you stop asking your body to carry the emotional labor your voice is afraid to speak. So well said. And that's why we need to say it clearly. Quiet burnout is not solved by rest. It's solved by realignment. Realignment with your limits. Realignment with your values. Realignment with your actual capacity. Realignment with your truth. And the beautiful thing is, once people understand this, they finally realize they're not weak. They're not failing. They're not dramatic. They're simply tired of upholding a life that no longer fits their soul. And that's not burnout. That's awakening. So, let's talk about the part most people wait for. How do you actually start healing quiet burnout? Not the Pinterest version, not the drink more water and take a bubble bath version, the real version. The humane one. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that burnout doesn't respond to productivity solutions. It responds to honesty.
Exactly.
And honesty is the hardest medicine because it asks you to look at the parts of your life that are overextended, unbalanced, or quietly draining you. But healing quiet burnout, that I'm fine but I'm dying inside kind, usually starts with one uncomfortable truth. You cannot heal in the same environment that broke you. Not without changing how you exist inside it. Yes, and that doesn't mean quitting your job or moving to Bali or redesigning your entire life overnight. It means shifting the internal patterns that made burnout your norm. Let's break it down gently. 1. The first step. Radical energy honesty. This means asking yourself a very simple but confronting question. What in my life gives energy, and what silently steals it? Most people think burnout comes from doing too much, but often, it comes from doing too much of the wrong thing. When you sit with yourself honestly, without judging, you'll see the leaks. People who drain you, routines that no longer fit, responsibilities you never agreed to, emotional labor you perform on autopilot. The pressure to be the strong one. Quiet burnout is nothing but accumulated self-betrayal. And sometimes the things you've normalized are actually exhausting you the most. 2. The second step. Lower the bar to human level. Quiet burnout thrives in people who think, I'll rest when everything is done. But everything is never done. So the healing begins when you create a realistic standard for being a human, not a machine. Even things like doing something at 70% instead of 100, choosing good enough instead of perfect, letting a small task wait, saying no the first time instead of the fifth. These soften the nervous system, and your brain genuinely recalibrates when you stop rewarding yourself only for overworking. It starts to associate calm with safety again, not danger. 3. The third step. Rebuild micro-joys. Burnout steals your sense of aliveness, so you need to rebuild it brick by brick. Micro-joys are tiny sparks that remind your brain life isn't all obligation. It can be embarrassingly simple. A warm drink in silence, a 10-minute walk without your phone, listening to a song that makes your chest loosen, lighting a candle, opening your window for fresh air, reading one page of something you love. These don't fix burnout, but they help your nervous system unfreeze. Yes, because when you're in quiet burnout, your body is stuck in survival mode, neutrality. Microjoys are basically emotional CPR. 4. The fourth step. Redistribute the weight. This is the part people resist because it requires renegotiating your relationships with others. You cannot heal if you continue carrying everyone's emotional weight, everyone's expectations, everyone's crises. Burnout recovery needs boundaries, not dramatic ones, but consistent ones. The kind that quietly say, I cannot be everything for everyone, and that's not a failure. Sometimes boundaries are not words, they are choices. Leaving messages on read until you have the bandwidth, delegating, not volunteering for extra work just because you can handle it, taking a quiet pause before agreeing to something. Each small boundary is a breath of air for a drowning nervous system. 5. The fifth step. Restore your body before your mind. People forget burnout is not just emotional, it's physiological. The body keeps the score before the mind even notices. So the first real recovery often looks like sleeping more, eating regularly, slowing your pace of walking, breathing deeper, stretching for 3 minutes, drinking enough water, stepping outside for daylight. These are not lifestyle luxuries. They are nervous system repair tools. Yes, because you can't think your way out of burnout if your body is still operating on emergency mode. 6. The sixth step. Let something go. Quiet burnout usually heals the moment you release one thing you've been gripping too tightly. A commitment. A role you've outgrown. A pressure you internalized. A pace that isn't sustainable. A story you keep repeating to yourself. I love that. Because healing isn't always about adding more self-care. Sometimes it's about subtracting what hurts. Letting go is not giving up. It's choosing to live. 7. The final step. Let yourself be human again. Burnout recovery is not heroic. It's humble. It's slow. It's deeply kind. It happens in everyday softness, not in grand transformations. And honestly, you don't need to become a new person. You just need to stop abandoning the one you already are. If you're listening and something inside you whispered, "This is me," then let this be your permission. You don't need to wait for a breakdown to begin healing. You can start now. In one tiny, kind, honest step. This is the quiet burnout healing. The kind that doesn't shout, but slowly brings you back to yourself. So, if you're listening right now and something in this conversation felt a little too familiar, take a breath. You're not broken. You're not failing. You're not dramatic. You're just tired in a way the world doesn't always have language for. Quiet burnout doesn't mean you're weak. It means you've been strong for too long without a place to land. And maybe this is the month you stop running on fumes. Maybe this December is your invitation to slow down, even a little. You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to transform your life overnight. Just choose one thing that nourishes you. One thing that gives you a breath of oxygen instead of another weight to carry. And if you're scared to slow down, that's normal too. Sometimes the first moment of stillness is the hardest. But stillness is where you finally hear yourself again. As we move through December together, I hope you give yourself permission to be human, to be tired, to rest, to come back to yourself gently, not forcefully. And remember, healing from quiet burnout isn't about doing more. It's about doing less with intention. It's about choosing what matters and letting the rest fall away. Thank you for spending this time with us today. We'll be back tomorrow with another soft moment, another honest conversation, another step toward a calmer life. Until then, breathe, slow down, and be kind to the version of you who's trying so hard. We're right here with you. See you tomorrow.